Welcome again to another episode of Stardust and Golden. Today we're going to do a really quick video shoot on winches, just cleaning winches. We're not going to do a rebuild. This is just a winch clean. There's a huge difference. We're basically going to pull the drum off the winch, clean it up, re-lubricate it. We're not going to measure out and spec out bearings and look for, shafts that might need, machining or redone. The reason I'm doing this today, a friend of mine, I was on the phone with a friend of mine a while ago who's buying a new boat, or a used boat, I should say. And he's getting very concerned about this and that, and naturally, you want to investigate everything you can when you're buying a boat. So he is researching absolutely everything that might be thrown at him as he gets into this journey. Now, he's a very experienced boater. He's owned boats. He's sailed most of his life. But he's concerned about what he might be getting into. It's late in the game for a lot of us. So we like to know what we're getting into before we actually dive in. Anyways, he found some research online about winches and how much time and effort it could take to clean up or fix winches that might be stuck or just be tight. Some winches, when they get older and they've been sitting on a boat for a long time, the boat hasn't been used, they become very tight. And they don't want to manipulate at all, and the paws are kind of stuck inside, so they can back free spin on you. These are all things he's looking into, and he found online that somebody says, it could take many, many hours to rebuild these things. And that's true, in a way. If you rebuild a winch, you're actually going to go through it, take it off the deck of the boat, and spec it out. You're going to measure all the bearings. You're going to investigate the bearings for any cracks or pits. You're going to mic up the bearings and the bushings. Some of them have actual bushings and a roller bearing. You're also going to check the whole bearing surface for spec from length to length to make sure it's not out of round or it's not nicked. The whole axle could be damaged, and that would cause you, it could cause you problems in the long run. I've never seen too many problems with that in winches. I mean, they're pretty fail-safe. They're pretty strong. Now, there's many kinds of winches we're not going to go over today. We're just going over a standard. Today it's just going to be a single speed winch off the vessel. But there's, you have electric winches, you have multi-speed winches, self-tailing winches. And today we're going over what would just be this, a single speed, small. This is the old, this is a Variant. And Barlow and Variant, they made a great winch. They really did. If you find them, grab them if they're cheap, but they're no longer in business. So finding parts for them can be hard unless you can machine them yourself. There is a company I heard in Australia that still carries parts for this winch. And this one here is a small one. It's a number 10. Now, winch sizes is a whole different story, but you'll see a lot of winches with the number on 10, 20, 30. This is considered a very small winch. And that's just a theoretical number of the force applied equals the force output. So this one's a 10. So apparently they measure that by 1 kilogram of force equals 10 kilograms output force. But we're not going to get too much into sizing or anything on this video. This is just a quick video just to show when these things, this one here is really hard to turn. It's really stuck. I'm going to go over a quick video on just how to clean this, basically, whether it's on the boat or if it's off the boat. Because to completely disassemble this, if you're really going to do a rebuild, it has to be off the boat. If you're going to just clean it and re-lubricate it, you can do it still mounted on the boat because the mounting screws are underneath the drum here. So it's very easy and very quick to do this when it's on the boat. You don't need to be a rocket scientist, and you don't need to call in a technician for $120 an hour to redo your winches, and we'll go over that very shortly here. Okay, simple procedure for this. This one here is one of the reasons I like these is because they have the slip ring. Makes it very easy to disassemble, and you can see a little ring right here. And this is the first thing you want to take off whenever you're getting into one of these. And it's not hard. You just use a small screwdriver or a scribe, and usually they'll come right up like that. Chase it around, and there you go. You want to be careful not to bend that. Very careful. Now this one here, this particular one, these old style winches are really good about this. Really easy to get apart. This one here, if you get a magnet or use your long fingernails, you can usually get the slip ring right off the top. Okay. So that's another source of garbage right there. You're going to clean that off really good. And you're going to put a thin bit of grease on that. And this is what I like to use for the winches, is the super lube. This stuff is really good because it doesn't leave any stains. It's clear. It doesn't leave any stains on the deck, and you don't need to use a lot of it. And on the paws, I use a 90 weight gear lube. Okay, so that's the drum. These are good to slip out here. We're going to clean this, so we're going to slip everything out. So these have got to come out. And you want to look to make sure that the edges are still square, very square, not rounded, and that they're not cracked, chipped, or broken, and that the springs still have some integrity. That's very important. Inspect the whole entire drum, that it's not cracked or split anywhere, and that there's no signs of any kind of corrosion. Nothing under here looks broke or rounded off. You still want a square edge on each one of the gears. One end comes in at an angle, the other end's a little bit on the square side. Look for damage on that. This is a very dirty bearing. We're going to have to wash that really well and check for damage. We won't be able to see it until we clean it. Now, if this was on the deck of the boat, this would be about as far as we could go right here. You can hear that is a little bit loose. That's where I like to put the 90 weight gear lube. Unless you're in the Arctic regions, it's nice to just use a couple drops of 90 weight. If you're going to be sailing in cold regions, I would expect maybe just a 10 weight motor oil, but just a few drops. You don't need much, and you don't want it to bleed all over your deck. So in this case, because we're off the boat, I'm going to pull the slip ring off the bottom here, and we'll clean and measure the whole shaft and then re-lubricate that. But you can see these two paws down here. We want to make sure that those are nice and clean. We're going to inspect those after we wash them in the solvent. If you do this on your boat, clean it with something that is not a spray. You really don't want to breathe in any bad fumes from some of the spray cleaners. They're really dangerous. I would recommend just some diesel fuel or something. Wear gloves. But you really don't want to spray this in the cabin of your boat with any brake cleaner or anything like that that's going to destroy your lungs. If you enjoy sailing, you might as well enjoy it for a few years and not destroy your lungs over it. So what we're going to do now is I'll pull this off, and then we'll prep it for cleaning. This is another slip ring. Some of these slip rings can be a real bear to get off. These would be uneasy for me. But when I did these on my boat, all of the winches on my boat were pretty much froze up when I got it. There was the ones on the mast were froze up from sitting out in weather, and we had the ones on the deck of the boat were froze up. You can see that's just totally dry. That's no good. And I don't think we're going to mic it up, but the grease has just become crystallized. It's almost like plastic. That's no good. So we're going to clean all this out, re-lubricate it. Now, if we were still on the boat, naturally we wouldn't have been able to pull this, but we could still lube it on the boat. So it's not necessary to pull these off just to clean them. If you're going to just service these once a year or twice a year, whenever you need to do it while they're on the boat. That way you don't have to rebed it. If you're on a micro budget, it can get expensive in time and money. If you're pulling, you got to pull your headliner, pull the bolts. 9 times out of 10, you're going to want to replace the bolts because you probably, in most cases, took away a little of the integrity of the screw heads. You know, if they're large number 3 Phillips, by the time that you were able to get these loose and off the deck, you don't want to use those same bolts a second time. They're done. I would consider them any place in especially if this is for a Jenny or a high power, using a big winch, and it's in a real position where you need a lot of integrity. Don't reuse the old bolts. Use new ones, and they're 9 times out of 10 they're going to be a flathead or a good Phillips stainless steel. Again, if you're saltwater, I would use a 316. But be careful. Make sure they're backed up really well. They're well bedded, and they're backed up really good with fender washers on the underside, because you want to distribute the surface as much as possible. And we'll be back as soon as I clean up some of this stuff. Okay, we're back with the cleaned up parts for the winch. We're going to reassemble this after we do a little inspection. The bearing cage appears to be in good shape. There's no crack splits or bends. It's not warped in any way. And all the bearings are intact. So we're going to call that good. We got a little bit of wear here on the main shaft. I can feel it with the fingernail, but it's not real severe. So we can still roll with that. And the drum, very little goes bad with these, unless they get contaminated with metal chips or anything in here, but the bore feels really smooth. So we're going to go ahead and start putting this back together. So we put some grease on the bearings and a little on here. We don't need a whole lot. We don't want this melting down in the sunlight. The sun beats down on this all day long. It shouldn't get too hot to melt the grease all over the deck, so we really don't want to keep too much grease on it. And the oil we are going to go light on too. So it doesn't take a whole lot. And we're going to just test it here to make sure that we got a nice smooth roll. Yeah, that's good. That's very good. Okay, so now paw time. We're going to put a little oil on these. I could not find my 90, so we're using a little bit of 40 here. I believe it's a straight 40. It's not a multi-grade. It's not an engine oil. So we'll try that. No slip in there. Make sure the spring has got good action. It should return really quickly. If it returns slowly, you either have too thick of oil or there's contaminants in there. You don't want that. Okay, and that looks fairly good. Okay, we should have put this in. I'm going to put a thin coat of grease on that. All right, yeah, and that feels, that's smooth. That's beautiful. It's not too heavy. So we'll pin that back in. And you just spread the clip just a little bit, as little as possible, just to get it on there. You really don't want to bend it. Once it's bent, it can get into, it can lead you into trouble. Let's put it that way. And then you can do the final push with a screwdriver, and then that's it. It's sealed in there. Double check to make sure it's completely in the groove. And we are good there. So the two top ones we should be able to put in last. We'll put a little bit of, so we got grease on that. And then you can hear the ratcheting effect. So it looks like, it sounds like It's going together properly. There it is. That's the way it should sound. Oil the last two. Put the springs in. And make sure that we're in the right direction. Sometimes the springs can be a little bit tricky to get in there. So I'm still going in the wrong direction there. I want to apologize. I keep using the word wench, but I have trouble pronouncing winch. So through the video, I will be using that word, and that's a mistake on my part, but it's very hard for me to say the word winch. So often you'll hear me say winch. I apologize for that in advance. Okay. There we go. That one's done. We've got to put a little grease on the bottom of this, though. I misspoke earlier when I said you could pull this out with a magnet. This is non-magnetic, as is most stainless. And that is it. Once this clip is in, you have a cleaned and greased winch. Wipe off the excess, and you're good to go. All right, thank you for watching, and we'll do another video series very shortly on something else I am sure. I'm not sure what's coming up next, but it should become evident. Thanks for watching.